Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker. Today, I'm delighted to have a conversation with Stela Lupushor. Stella, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah. And Stella, allow me to introduce you to our audience. You are a Chief Reframer. That in itself is going to create a huge discussion. What is that? But to give a little bit of an insight, you help to create great workplace experiences through the use of technology. Also, you are a teacher on the digital workspace design and digital thinking, co-author of a couple of books on humanizing human capital and humans at work. In the past, you worked for organizations like Fidelity Investments, IBM, and PwC. And in your private life, we have a lot of common ground because you love to cook, travel, and scuba dive. And you're currently living in New Jersey. Now, come back to the first statement. Chief Reframer, what does that mean? What is that?
It is a little bit of a history of how I got here. When I left the corporate world and I went independent, I opened my shingle. I opened hung the shingle on the corporate brand, and none of the titles that usually come with the role fit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not CEO. I'm not the president. I'm not like these big titles. I'm just an independent consultant who helps leaders think differently about the opportunities technology brings to create better experiences for all of us at work. So I thought I'll just have a little humor with it. So I'm not anything. I'm just a chief reframer because
Yeah.
that's what I do. That's my craft. And I updated my LinkedIn profile. And a few days later, Adam Munoz connected to me, and Adams was a framer in the window business. So that's when I knew I found my tribe. I
Yeah.
finally found the right title.
Okay. But what needs to be reframed?
The way we think about the work environment, right? We all look at the workplace as a source of income. Many of us look at it as a way of learning, of building community, of belonging, of leaving a legacy, attaining a status, attaining self-transcendency, whatever it is that you define as the reason why you work. However, when we think about the workplace, the way it's designed, the way it, it's intending to give you that experience, there is a lot of disconnect, right? From HR perspective, where I spend majority of my career, we think of the workplace through the lens of processes that HR performs. We do recruitment, and therefore there is a series of tools and processes and controls and metrics that put you through this funnel in order to identify that perfect unicorn that will come to solve the company's biggest problems. And there is less emphasis on what it feels like to be that candidate, whether you're the unicorn or anybody else. It is an efficiency play more than an experience play. And when we do it to other people, and when I say we as HR practitioners,
Mhm.
right, we are thinking from how we can do more with less, how we can put more candidates through that, pipeline in order to create that perfect unicorn candidate, as opposed to saying, well, when we go ourselves through that experience, what does it feel like? If I don't get a confirmation, or I don't get a response from a recruiter, or I get rejected without an explanation of what it happens, it forms an imprint on my opinion about that company. And when I shift my role from a candidate to a consumer, I may have a very different perspective on interacting with that brand. Or when I talk to my friends and family about buying or consuming products or services from that company, I may have a very different perspective. So opportunities along the entire journey emerge for not only HR, but the managers and organizations at large to reimagine the small and big moments that are happening and change it in a way that maximizes the experience for both sides. Right? I come to work for attaining uh, um, knowledge growth, right? How might we create that experience for you just because we'll make you employable for the rest of your life? And regardless of where you go, you'll speak about our brand in a very positive way and very differently. And technology can enable you to do that. Analytics and data now provides a bound amount of insights that you can identify those friction points, or you can identify opportunities to intervene in a positive way, such that whatever the relationship between the worker and the organization emerges, it provides ample opportunities for both sides to win.
Okay. I just want to check, does that mean you have like your own philosophy what the ideal workplace should look like? Or does this also allow the leadership team to say, well, this is the company I want to build, this is the work environment I want to offer, and if they don't feel, if they're not interested, take it or leave it.
The latter.
The latter.
But doing it in a way that it's humanizing, right? You look at every individual not as a number or as a headcount or a FTE, right? You look at it as a human being. And when you are very honest and say, this is this company and this is what it's like to work here. If you are attracted and compelled by this value proposition, this is the place for you. But don't create a marketing campaign saying, well, you're gonna uh, be your best self and we care about people. And then as soon as you come through the door, that's not what you're experiencing. That's really the point of a lot of these conversations. You need to be honest as a leader about what you're trying to create and then communicate that and embed that into every single activity and process and decisions that you're making. Is this aligning to what we're saying this company is all about?
Okay, so you're helping organization take the consequence of their own ambition to be a particular consequence. So, and just hey, holding up a mirror, look, and if this is what you want, that's what it looks like. That's what you have to do.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but does that also then mean that if an organization would approach you, hey, Stella, look, I'm just concerned with earning as much money as I can. I'm gonna treat these, you could say, assets as FTEs. I don't care if they're human. Is that then okay? I can help you. I can still help you, or is that like a no-go?
For the most part, it's a no-go
Yeah,
because I have my own values. And there are ways to maximize your revenue or whatever the outcome, the business outcome is, if you're open to explore what that looks like. Because
yeah,
companies spend between 50 to 70% of their, you know, their revenue on headcount, right? Majority of their cost is in headcount, unless you're one of those emerging unicorns where you have, 100
yeah.
billion valuation with only 20 people. But for the most part, majority of large organizations, a lot of their costs are invested in human capital that then creates the services or whatever the offerings are. And if you make the right investments at the right points in them and the journey, you'll be able to maximize that investment. And there are measurements you can track, right? Um, Human capital, the ROI in your human capital, which is how much money you get back for every single dollar you invest in that. And you can easily start identifying those little points where you can say, all right, if we invest in the right type of experience to get the best candidates through the door, and then we invest in the best onboarding experience so they can become productive much faster, you'll be able to recoup a lot of those investment very quickly. If you invest in the retention of people and you pay maybe a little bit above the market, you will not have to waste money on replacing them just because they're going to quit,
Yeah.
or paying more because those that you're going to hire externally will want more money, or invest in the talent acquisition function because now you'll have a whole different machine to churn through and
Yeah.
acquire more people. And the brand image is not going to get impacted, and your customers are not going to be looking at the company as, hey, you're churning through your people. Now I have another salesperson where somebody else who doesn't understand me. I build relationship with the previous person. I cannot build new relationship. I'll take my money elsewhere, right? So you need to look at it as a system of connected interventions and interactions with both the internal machinery and bureaucracy, but also with the external world, including those who are paying money to you,
Great.
um,
Yeah. Hey,
in reimagining that relationship.
I get your point, but I'm going to challenge you because I'm
Right.
then now wondering to what extent are you talking about an almost bygone era in the sense that I now see story coming up. Well, the workforce of the future is going to be AI enabled. I was recently talking to somebody who said, actually, I have an organizational chart where a part of the organization is fulfilled by humans and a part being filled by AI agents.
Yep.
What's your take on that?
I've been on this journey for a long time, and I completely agree. We need to rethink the workforce. And if you hear me speak, I don't use usually the word employee because that comes with a different connotation that
Yeah.
assumes those who are privileged to have an employer um, contract was an employer. And when I think about the workforce, it's broader, right? It's not just your employees, but also contractors, but also digital workers, but also customers who engage in evaluating your products, right? They all perform work. And the emerging world of the future is really to reimagine what the work is. We assume that work is described by job descriptions, when in
Mhm.
fact, job descriptions rarely are accurate.
Yeah.
Maybe on day one, if that, but they're usually used as a filter to filter people out, as opposed to think creatively of how you solve the work puzzle. What is the work activity that needs to get done, and how do you optimally parse out those activities to the most optimal or the best worker?
Okay.
So, and
Okay.
that could
Yeah.
be
Sorry.
even AI as a
Yeah.
worker, right?
Yeah. So
And yeah, go
yeah,
on.
because the person I was talking to said, okay, you have to treat your AI agent as a trainee. You have to train them, and once they're trained, they actually are they can do the job, whatever that is, which an AI agent can do, much faster than humans. Easy.
And some of those activities shouldn't have been done by humans to begin with, because that's
Good
how
point.
we end up
Yeah.
with,
Okay.
you know, routine work and, frustrating work that sucks the life out of you, as opposed to saying, all right, this is routinized, this is easily describable by a procedure. I think machine will be a lot better at performing with a higher quality.
Yeah.
And we leave the human, truly human um, activities to the humans to perform.
Okay, but then my question, which comes up in my mind, is if there's a lot of things we can automate,
Yeah.
um, why do we still have that mindset? Oh, work needs to be done in 40 to 60 hours a week. Can't we then just say, look, hey, we've automated most of the work. You're an employee and you're going to get the same salary, but we're just going to pay you. We are going to ask you just to invest 10, 20 hours a week because the rest is automated. Why do we still force people to fill in the week?
Well, if I look at myself, it's self-inflicted
Yeah,
because we find fulfillment.
yeah,
So that's kind of the positive story of this. The negative story is the fear. And we see even, in the recent headlines, a lot of prominent CEOs kind of instilling fear in its workforce that people's jobs are at risks because of the AI, and you have to embrace it and you have to use it. So I think a lot of people, they may not necessarily be doing 100% of that 60, 80 hours a week, but they will show up it's called presenteeism, just so you can show that you are committed to the company and not, expose yourself to risks of being let go.
Okay, but in
Of course,
okay, in the future, do you see that we're going to let go of connecting output to outcome, which we're doing right now? You need to work 40 hours. No, we're interested in your outcome.
yeah,
And if you do that in 5 or 10 hours, we don't care as long as you produce that result.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But that requires a very different policy base, I think. And I think it's not just in the
Yeah.
US, but everywhere around the world, right? We have certain requirements for the number of hours you are allowed or we're
Yeah.
supposed
Yeah.
to work.
Yeah. Because an earlier
Um,
guest in the show talked about the need for a universal basic income. He said, look,
but
hey, we're automating so much that if we go down that route, we don't force people
yeah.
to do something which doesn't fit. And if we allow that to happen, then we could take care
Yeah.
of ourselves.
And I think the labor laws are, outdated, was built for an industrial era and that have not been supporting the knowledge economy for quite some time. I think the other problem we're going to run into is um, the demographic
Yeah.
changes and the number of people in general in the labor market. We're already seeing some of those constraints. So in a way, a lot of this automation is welcome because it will help continue productivity growth and create value for organizations. The the challenge is really how to rethink the redistribution of that value such that it's not just the big labs that are winning,
Yeah.
but everybody who contributed their knowledge, their data, their insights and talent can also benefit from this value that gets created.
Now, are you able to point out in your view, good examples of that's an organization I use in a prime example, they got it.
As far as the workplace experience,
Yeah.
oh, I'll give a recent example. I I had an opportunity to do a little presentation at the company called Etsy.
Nice.
And I was blown away because of the experience they gave me as a contractor. Usually, as a contractor, when I go to different companies, um, you have to deal with heavy procurement system, with a lot of back and forth to create the perfect contract, with red lines, with giving up a lot of rights over the intellectual property. So I always feel like a second class citizen when I interact with a lot of um, corporate procurement machinery. In this case, I felt special. The whole procurement, onboarding, everything happened in a matter of, 48 hours. There was very little negotiation and back and forth on the little details. Um, Everybody communicated very friendly in a very welcoming way, with thoughtful attention to the details to me as a human being. And when I think about AI impact, right, that type of relationship building is not going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. Um, and
And the
and
fact that you're sharing this example prove it works because you just promoted Etsy as a company, which is a good example
absolutely,
there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about Etsy, right, you think about the textile revolution and how tech, the mechanical loom replaced a lot of the craftspeople and displaced whole industries. And yet, fast forward to today, you still have a business like Etsy that is empowering a lot of the crafts people and allowing people to express their creativity and make money in the
Yeah.
process. So
Yeah.
there's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting
Okay. Now it's
roundabout.
I understand the example. Now, do you have any role models in your industry?
It may be counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but to me, my students are my role models. I I look at this next generation of HR leaders, and it gives me hope for the future of workplace, for the future of humanity, for the future of employment for my children. There is this really deep desire to really bring that humanity to the workplace. And a lot of them are very technically savvy. They're very passionate about using data. They're interested in technology. They want to create a better workplace experience. So to me, I look at every single one of them like, oh my gosh, can I come work for you?
Yeah. Okay.
You inspire me.
But I'm assuming when you said that, that there has to be some kind of turning point, a tipping point when you started to realize, hey, that's actually my role model.
Yeah.
Was that like an epiphany, or did you gradually grow into that realization, oh, these are the people I need to listen to?
I think it's coming also from my love of interacting with the
Yeah,
youth in general. I have three children in very different age groups, and to me, that's the best way I can spend my time.
yeah,
Is just talking through them, understanding how they think, understanding how they see the world, what are the challenges that they are experiencing. One is full-time employment. The second one is still kind of discovering what he wants to do with his life. And the third one just graduated from high school. So very different perspectives and life stages and experiences. So for me, that turning point initially was, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun hanging out as my children. I need to find other clusters of these kids to be with.
yeah. And well, when we talked earlier, we also talked about failures and what failures can bring you. Are you willing to share a couple of, I would say, your brilliant failures, which allow you to learn?
Based on your definition that you shared, right? First attempt in learning. Um, you can either say I only had failures or I never had one. But they're all very incredible learning opportunities. I think my biggest regret, or at least in the role of a parent, my biggest regret and one could consider failure, is the decision with the first child, right? I grew up in Soviet Union. I was a student when the Soviet Union fell apart. The world opened up and we got opportunity to work on mass privatization project and building the capital markets infrastructure in Moldova, where I'm from. And then that connected us to Pricewaterhouse, which was the vendor that
Mm.
won the USAID tender to run all of these projects. And with Pricewaterhouse, we moved to Ukraine. We lived in Ukraine for a year. We moved to Moscow. We lived there for a year and a half, and then we came to US. With all of this movement, we just had my first one, and it was just impossible to be a decent parent while traveling all over the world. So the first child, we left her with grandparents for 2 years. And at that time, my justification was that, hey, I'll catch up on what I've missed with the next children that I'm going to have. But nevertheless, I think she had a great experience. She was taken care of. But I feel I missed and failed as a parent for abandoning your child for such a long time because of career pursuit.
Yeah. But then again, it's a decision you made at the time. Maybe, I mean, I'm not trying to justify your decision, but I can assume that when you make a decision like that in your life, uh, at the end of the day, it's going to catch up on you. Either you realize I miss out something, or it's given everybody the opportunity to do what they can do right now.
That's absolutely the case. And the best part is, or at least the way I'm processing this is when talking to her, she doesn't remember much of it anyway. It was so young and early in her development stage. So she doesn't remember and she doesn't,
Yeah.
uh,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. But
Okay.
anyway,
Yeah. But now, Stella, you do a lot of keynote speeches on this topic. what are the top three questions people are struggling with when you present?
Question one, where do we start? Question two, how do we convince the leaders? Question three, this is just not how the world works. So the way I try to address question one is start anywhere. A lot of these moments are not big happenings in workplace, right? They may be very small tweaks you can make to make somebody's life easier. So having that conversation and willingness to say, we'll experiment, we'll just run a little mini pilot and see where it goes. And if it's good, we'll just deploy it in a broader way. So that design mindset, iterating, experimenting, building prototype is something that HR has a lot more space to grow into because we're so perfectionist. We're so by the book, we'll make it perfect. And by the time we create that perfection, the world moved on. So like don't wait, just jump in and get things done. Second question is how to convince the business leaders. It's use the data, use analytics and say, are you willing to spend so much money in replacing your attrition, or are you willing to invest a small portion of that to avoid that cost later on? And then the world is not working that way. I think the world works the way we make it to be. And many times when people start kind of challenging and questioning, is this methodology or is this a way of looking at the opportunities in the workplace really for me? Can I fight it? Like, if not you, then who?
Yeah,
If not now,
yeah,
then when?
yeah. Because you've been in the boardroom of a number of Fortune 500 companies over the years. Do you see them embracing this or fighting this?
Both. I think there is an acknowledgement that actually workers matter and worker voices matter. You need to listen. And of course, in some European countries, you would have worker representatives on the boards. In the US is not as much. There is also pushback, I think, globally in retrenchment against some of this more progressive thinking, and kind of pushing back the worker voice, which it's probably part of the pendulum that will
Yep.
continuously see until it stabilizes. But at the end of the day, you cannot have a business without at least one human, right? So treating that human the way it deserves to be treated, I think matters, and boards need to be
Yeah.
paying attention to that.
Great. So, how do you treat yourself? I mean, your work-life balance. You love to cook, travel, and scuba dive. Is that in balance? Do you do it enough?
Not enough of scuba diving, but there is plenty of cooking. There's yoga. There is walking and exercising. And the beautiful part of wisdom at this age is you learn what maximizes your productivity and what makes you more effective as a worker, and then you make that part of your routine and day-to-day activities. It came early on. I was a digital nomad and remote worker for most of my career. And at the beginning, you would forget to take showers, you would forget to eat, you would schedule calls over, um, your children's appointments, and you'd forget to pick them up from the field, from the soccer field. Like all of those are lessons that I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
But by now, I think it's looking at the day holistically and looking at things that give me energy because that's the only way I can be an effective worker. So I don't look at that as a life versus work. To me, that's part of the life.
It's more integrated in each
Right.
other, with each other. Yeah. And basically also I just realized that cooking, traveling, and scuba diving, there are a couple of great spots in the world you can combine all three together.
We should go there.
Great. Okay. Well, talking about going, we've had a great conversation, Stella, about yeah, helping organizations place you could say, the human in the center of the workplace and why you need that. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your stories and insight here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fritz. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.